Instead of having bonds and equities, you need to have gold, you need to have silver, you need to have those assets that will protect you and that will be decorrelated relative to the gradual erosion of the currency's purchasing power.
They now have to keep printing or we crash.
We've got this ticking time bomb.
Talking gold with the one and only Andrew Maguire.
Welcome to Live from the Vault.
Welcome to Live from the Vault, brought to you by Kinesis Money. And this is the show that goes beyond the headlines to uncover the truth about the gold and silver markets with world-renowned whistleblower and industry expert Andrew Maguire. And this week, he'll be joined by a very special featured guest. Yes, we're talking to Daniel Lacalle, and he's here in the vault with us. And we're talking gold, we're talking silver. You're just not going to want to miss a word of this conversation. So let's head over to the UK and join Andrew Maguire and our featured guest, Daniel Lacalle. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Daniel, for joining us. This is really the last time. I was thinking, what a pertinent time, because we had a lot of requests for you to join us. And if you recall, the last time you were here, the timing actually could not have been more perfect, because J.D. Vance, if you remember, he had that renowned, I think it was the 14th of February, 2025, the Munich security meeting. And he called these European commissars, and he talked about, he really rinsed them, and he got no applause and dead silence. How do you think, how is that all playing out? Because it was perfect timing.
How has it all played out? I think that everything that Mr. Vance said has proven to be very right. We have seen an unprecedented threat against the freedom of expression. The European Union approved the democracy shield, which basically allowed things like changing the result of an election, banning parties, etc. So all those things basically have happened. No, fortunately, has also happened is that the awareness about the threats to freedom of expression and to people's will were more than just small headlines. People were not that aware of all the things that were happening, and right now, what we are seeing all over Europe is a very significant backlash against those politicians that try to quietly but strongly implement those types of limitations, and hopefully that'll result in it not happening and an improvement. No.
Yeah, and I think that sort of leads into. I saw it was breaking news. I think yesterday, the day before yesterday. Your Spanish foreign minister, I think Jose Manuel Alvarez, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he had a very pitched battle with Ursula von der Leyen.
And what happened is something that is very odd, no, but at the same time shows a lot of these inconsistencies and the lack of coherence of many of the European leaders. No, is that what basically Mr. Alvarez was doing was criticize von der Leyen for supporting the partners and for saying something that should not have been grounds for criticism in any shape or form, which is that nobody will shed a tear, and I quote, for the Iranian regime. I don't think that if you think about it, a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, nobody would have created a criticism or that kind of headlines, no? And I think that what's going on, for example, in the case of Spain is very simple, is that the government is doing one thing and the opposite all the time. The Spanish government, on the one hand, is trying to give to its electorate and to the mainstream media an image of being anti-war, pro-peace, and and always sort of giving messages that appeal very much to the what we could call the woke environment, no? But at the same time, the president is sending other ministers to give reassurance to the United States, to Israel, to other NATO partners that everything has not changed. And it's this hypocrisy. I'm going to say it because it is. No, is this hypocrisy what certainly makes everybody, so many people in the European Union so angry, is to see that it's all about giving a message that may appeal to the media, and then doing something else, or not doing anything, or saying that they're very much in favor of something, but the action does not happen. There's nothing there. No, it's just it's just so bureaucratic and so pointless, to be fairly honest, that it's embarrassing sometimes.
Yes, and they really doesn't look like they want any form of off ramp with the Russia situation at all. It looks like they're too deeply invested in that continuing ad infinitum.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is what angers people. Is that on the one hand, the European Union and the governments are saying that their position relative to Russia and the war in Ukraine remains very, very strict and very aggressive, while the next thing that you read in a very small headline about the European Union is that they will delay the ban on Russian gas and extend it for another year. So you're saying, and the Spanish government is saying that they're very much very committed to the Ukraine war, etc. And Spain is the fifth largest Russian LNG importer. So you see where you see is that France is talking about this thing and the partnership and being very, very strict, and increased 57% imports of gas from Russia. So obviously what people see is, on the one hand, that their bills are going higher. On the other hand, they see that the rhetoric is creating real problems in people's day-to-day lives, because affordability is much more of a challenge. And on the other hand, they're basically doing one thing and the opposite. It makes no sense for the European Union to reach a trade agreement of the scope of the agreement that the European Union signed with India, who's one of the largest trade partners of Russia and one of the largest importers of Russian oil, and obviously legitimately so, etc. And at the same time, give a message that the position relative to Russia and relative to the war in Ukraine has not changed. It's like if people are thinking of a sort of PowerPoint slide policy in which the borders don't exist, and in which the world, the east of the world doesn't exist. It's very, very it's very concerning, to be fairly honest, because most importantly, because it's not just about lack of coherence, and it's not just about the blatant incompetence, is that this is leading to lack of competitiveness. The European Union continues to be in a very, very weak economic environment. Inflation is still a very significant problem. And on top of that, we're going to find ourselves now with not just the challenges of the supplies coming from Russia, but we're going to find ourselves with supply coming from Algeria and supply coming from the United States, also challenged due to ridiculous diplomatic crisis that no one called for, and more importantly, this, I remember there was I think it was a Quincy Jones song that don't write checks with your mouth that your body can cash. No, this is what's happening. What is happening is that we're saying things that we simply cannot enforce, because we need to be. I mean, you have to be realistic. We're not talking about opinions. It's realistic that the European Union does not have the possibility of playing hardball in a game in which it does not have energy independence in any shape or form.
And very much unipolar thinking. And I think you published a book I think it was October, November of last year, called The New World Economic Order. And you actually really delve into how the multipolar world is actually, and I think you put it, far less dangerous than the previous elite-driven approach. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I'm sure a lot of you, I'm sure your students have all read it, but I mean, it'd be really interesting for you to explain really what inspired you to deal with that subject.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a good moment to talk about that, because the English version of the book, The New World Economic Order, is now available for anyone to read and available at Amazon. If I may plug my book.
Great.
So in the English version, I've updated also the book, so for people to understand how, for example, the impact on the European economy has been very, very severe of the changes that have been happening. But I think that's basically down to the fact that we now have two large economies, the United States and China. Both of them are technology leaders. Both of them are financial leaders. One of them is an energy leader, the United States. China is another energy leader alongside its strategic partner of Russia and some of the Latin American and African countries. And that is changing the world completely in the way in which we look at it. The world is, on the one hand, at the same time, seeing how most central banks that are not US centric are buying more gold, less fiat currencies in their asset base. We are seeing at the same time how the United States position stops being one of the so-called globalization and more of a outside-looking, inward interest type of policies, and all of that is playing out very, very quickly. And technology is at the forefront of it, no? And technology leadership is what is driving that level of ability to continue to be global leaders. Unfortunately, the European Union doesn't have energy leadership, doesn't have technology leadership. It does have financial leadership, but because of the fragmentation, it is not being able to capitalize on it. So all of that is what I'm talking about. The risk in the book, what I mentioned is that the risk is that the response to the population's discontent with the what we call the years of globalization, everything being decided in closed circuits, international bodies, etc., has also created this what I call the predatorial state, no? A state that is looking to silence and to cancel people that think differently. And that, interestingly, we're seeing it right now in the European Union. If 5 years ago you were in favor of nuclear, you would have been canceled, vetoed, and considered somebody that is against the European Union. Now the European Union has finally found out that nuclear is absolutely critical for energy security, and now it's perfectly European. So it's not even something, this silent censorship is incredibly dangerous, because it's not based on the censorship that we were used to, maybe people that are my age, etc., which is that the government says you cannot say this and you cannot read that. No, it's elusive. It's constant, telling you don't give an opinion because it may have consequences. It may not, or it may, but it's simply to silence people. And I think that is one thing that certainly the European Union is starting to at least be aware of.
Absolutely. Obviously, there's a lot that you cover in that book. Now, what's interesting to me is you talk about the multipolar world, and I think what I see there, and is that you've got a bunch of different countries who see it, who figure it's actually hey, maybe we're traditional enemies. Maybe we didn't get on in the past. But wouldn't it be to our advantage to get on, take some walls down, which is completely alien to the way that the people that are fighting this so-called the fear of the bricks rising, and really, what is the fear there? Because really, what we're doing is it evolves into a world really which has no threat to each other.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that a key element of the predatorial state is to make people live in fear all the time about a very important enemy that nobody can see. It's like, oh my God, this is the biggest threat we've ever seen. There's nothing has been so aggressive as what is happening right now. But we're being told, and no one sees it, no, and no one. And I think that is part of what also J.D. Vance was saying, no, and I think that Marco Rubio said it as well recently in Munich, which is that we need to find ways of cooperating and there may be disagreements, but there needs to be cooperation, and we cannot think of a world that has to move where the bureaucrats would like it to move. No, obviously, in terms of money, bureaucrats and statists would love for the world to be like the MMT crowd define it, but it's not that way. It is not that way. And obviously, I'm perfectly fine if the BRICS nations want to get together and find a way to try to sort out their monetary challenges. I'm perfectly fine with it. What I don't understand is why we need to look at things from the perspective of a threat. It is not a threat. No, it is not a threat. I love competition. If it's a good idea, it'll work. If it's a bad idea, it'll fail. The so-called gold-backed Bolivar was an abject failure, not because gold-backed currencies are not going to work, but because there was no trust in the government that issued it. And I think that those things, ultimately, when you let the market work, it's much better. And I think that that's what people are starting to realize, is that those that are always telling you that they're going to protect you from an alleged threat are actually the ones that are creating the threat, no?
100%. Daniel, this is, and the Magna Carta was run through as if it was nothing. And the Labour government that we have here in this country decided to just withdraw the right for jury trials for people. So now, opening up the self-appointed judges who have been likely appointed by the government to do its will. So all of a sudden, they can now, if I do a tweet and they don't like it, I can be in jail tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you'll be in jail faster than if you had actually committed a crime, which is because this is a key element of it, is that on the one hand, the police force, the authorities, the way that we know them as independent authorities, their power is being undermined all the time. And so if you are a real criminal, you're having the time of your life. However, if you decide to not even do the tweet, if you decide to like a comment that is deemed as hate speech by the government, you will have a number of police people that you have not seen in your life in your front door, telling you that you may have to go to the police station and answer some questions, which is only there to show you that you will be prosecuted for having a different opinion. And of course, the concept, think about this. No, because this is only for those messages that are hateful comments. So what is hateful comment? Yeah. What is a hateful comment? Okay, a hateful comment, if somebody is liking it, makes them say, more importantly, what is a hateful comment? Comment every day in the House of Parliament. We're hearing MPs all day saying all types of incredibly hateful things against businesses, against entrepreneurs, against against anybody. That's not hate speech. What is hate speech? Hate speech is anything that threatens the power of the state to maintain people in a submissive way.
Yes, and that even leaches into discussion points. So if you were to go to a university, and I'm sure you do multiple times have talked at universities, there's a problem there. If you, it's almost slanted. What is that? What is that, Daniel? What's happening there?
Yeah, it's called the most beautiful way of controlling people, which is confirmation bias. Hmm? You go to a university, which is supposed to be an environment of dissent where people discuss, have provocative, even controversial ideas, and that's what it should be. That's what university should be about, and it should be about discussing, and it should be about finding avenues to confront ideas from an educated but open way. And universities have become basically just propaganda machines that just allow one type of message and one way of thinking. And the way of thinking is not even an ideology. It's this is what you are being told to say now, and now you must defend that. And that may be the opposite of what was said a month ago. A month ago, it was all about defending the rights of women, and now it's about defending the rights of a regime that executes women. Who cares? No? And this element of contradiction and bias is what really is undermining the credibility of independent institutions and the ability to reach a meaningful dialogue. One of the things I loved about UK universities that I have extensively gone to and participated in debates, etc., was precisely that you could sit in a hall with somebody that thought things in exactly the opposite way and discuss them openly without any type of problem, and people would take their own views and make their own decisions. Now the decision for the has been made for the public before the discussion has been made, and one of the arguments has been completely canceled out.
Well, that's probably why your students follow you with such passion, because where do you get? The thing is, if you can't get it from a university, you have to seek it. You have to show initiative and take responsibility for oneself, which is really essentially what you're providing people is a place where people who have taken that step and really seek to understand. They were happy to, you're happy to argue with people. You're happy to find that, as you say, they have different opinions. And out of sometimes it's like you've got two circles of opinion, but there's a little middle point where there's an ellipse. And you might both agree about something, and you might both learn something, which is amazing to me.
There's a conversation I had with Yanis Varoufakis on YouTube somewhere, that in which people would see that precisely, two people that thought the opposite in so many things. And we maybe just agreed on two things, but we did agree on a couple of things. Well, that shows that it's not about enemies, it's not about adversaries, it's about open. When I hear the word polarization, what is polarization? Polarization has always been progress. That is what polarization is. You have people that think completely different than others, and what's the problem? There is no problem in that. The concept of polarization comes from those that wanted to impose uniformity.
Well, this is why I love these kind of sessions, because let's face it, there's no journalism anymore in the mainstream, and that's what worries me. Is how could you go to sleep at night as a so-called journalist or a scientist or somebody with a you know, with an intelligent person? How can they actually face the world when they realize that they're just towing a narrative which they daren't vary from? And I think that's the problem, is that it's sound bites. So when I speak to the average person out there, and we have great discussion, the pub is still a good place to get a good discussion going. Yeah, absolutely. And you can really get people going. And I think, but it amazes me that they have picked up sound bites. They're all the same sound bites. They come from different newspapers, but they're just the sound bite, and they're all the same. It's one narrative. And when you say to people, but doesn't it worry you that there's only one narrative? They look at you as if you're hurting me. You're actually hurting me to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. But I think on a positive note, I think that when you have discussions with people and when you see the way that people are reacting, the reason why governments are so concerned right now is because people have stopped believing narratives. Huh? People have stopped believing narratives. They make their own opinion, and it's sad, but they have created it themselves. A lot of people that I meet with on a daily basis say, "Oh, I don't read newspapers anymore." Hmm? Why? They're always saying the same thing. No, I look for information in independent outlets in different areas, etc., and I make my own opinion. Sometimes it's different. Sometimes it's. But turning on the news at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, depending on the country where you are, and listening to the news is something that very few people do anymore. Huh? Precisely because of that.
It's really interesting. I had a lunch with a chap who runs one of the oldest polo clubs in the country here, and very straightforward guy, businesslike, no conspiracy theories in his mind. And I said to him, "What do you think about this migration issue?" And he said, "Andrew, two things: it's weaponized, and the other thing is it's about martial law." And I thought, these are the kind of things I would have in a deep conversation with someone. But this coming from somebody who is just an everyday person who has not, and as you say, it gave me my spirit rose to hear, oh, hang on, there's more mainstream stuff going on. That, as you say, people are questioning the narrative.
No, people are questioning the narrative, and they see obviously that nobody is against legal immigration. Everybody can understand why you are against illegal immigration. No one is against people that want to contribute to a nation for it to thrive. Everybody understands why you would be against people that create ghettos that are going to be going against the different laws and the culture of the country that you have created, with different people and different opinions. No, everybody understands. Everybody starts to understand now that illegal immigration is not a coincidence or a fatality. It's a policy to try to impose, first of all, purchase of votes from abroad, and second, to create a dependent subclass in the country that will always be dependent on the state, and that at the same time is hurting the taxpayer more and more. And I think that is pretty evident now. Nobody very few people actually disagree with that now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've read, I think on your blog site, was you talk about rising voter anger and the rejection of top-down policies. This is what we're talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely. Policies that are all driven by social engineering. Social engineering. The politicians found out that the average voter has higher levels of discontent. Taxpayers are angrier that the policies that they're implementing are worse off. So what do they try to do? They try to implement social engineering changes so that the society adapts to their narrative, not that they serve society. That's ultimately the goal.
But perhaps we could just move on to the global stage at the moment with what's going on at the moment with the Iran situation. Could you just give me your general thoughts on that? Because I know that you'd mentioned in if we drill down into some of that you'd mentioned, and I did read your blog, and you were saying, hang on a minute, if this Hormuz Strait gets closed, it can actually affect China more than anyone else.
Well, obviously, we need to remember that the risk of the Strait of Hormuz is a 2-decade-long risk. No, therefore, shipping companies have been preparing themselves for the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, pretty much because of this constant Peter and the wolf type of situation in which we're always crying wolf. Oh my God, it's going to be closed. Oh my God, it's going to be closed. So let's find alternative routes. No, so what shuts down the Strait of Hormuz is not one country. Is the insurance company. Is the insurance company that tells the shipping company, look, you might as well, if you have a bill of lading, you're going to pay a massive premium going this way, take a different route. That's on the one hand. The second is that because of those threats over the past 2 decades, 80% of the volumes that move through the Strait of Hormuz go to Asia. No? It's also the main route of Iran's oil and oil product exports. So it's very, and it is obviously damaging for the Chinese economy, because the first thing that China has had to do, and thank God they had that option available, was to double the amount of imports of Urals, Russian crude. It's called Urals, no? But it's obviously a very significant impact, because the Chinese authorities have immediately called to ban exports of refined products, to conserve as much as what the refineries can keep within the boundaries of the nation. And although some VLCCs, very large crude tankers, are moving to Asia, it is obviously the biggest impacted. Also, from a price perspective, big impact, no? For China, the crude oil that comes from Iran comes at a very, very steep and therefore attractive discount. Now they're having to find other options that are not sold at the same level of discount, even at a premium. They're purchasing flexible LNG carriers from any place that they can at very, very steep prices. Obviously, that is going to have an impact on the Chinese economy. It's not going to enter into a recession. For people that read that article, as I said, hopefully they got to the end of it, but it's not going to create a recession, but it's certainly the most impacted out of all the, let's say, important economic agents. The second most impacted is obviously the European Union, because of what we said before, the lack of alternatives in gas, in natural gas, and in liquefied natural gas, no?
Yeah, and I think now that, and only the last few days, we see that the Iran's oil terminals have been bombed. That is, and I don't think Trump was very happy about that.
No, absolutely not.
No, absolutely not. So that creates an even, this really embeds that problem, doesn't it? It really.
I think it will, because a lot of the, let's start from the biggest positive, which is that we entered this situation with a very large level of excess capacity in the oil system. There was about 4 million barrels a day of excess capacity. But think about it, in 8 days, that excess capacity has gone to zero. Because of the force majeure of Qatar, force majeure of Emirates, the bombing of some of the facilities in Iran, etc. All of that has made a very significant dent. So certainly the situation for the entire area is one of very significant risk, because although Saudi Arabia has moved about 7 million barrels a day through the East-West pipeline, that makes that limits the risk but does not eliminate it. No, we are currently basically facing in the oil world a situation in which, if the conflict continues the way that it is or escalates and perpetuates for 5-6 months, we're basically globally going to depend on two types of supply. One is going to be from the United States. The other, and this is it's not an ideological. This is a numerical fact. The other is Russia. Is that it's no wonder, and it's past. I haven't seen many headlines, but it's there. It's a piece of news. It's no wonder that China is multiplying the imports. And it's no wonder that India is also multiplying the imports. So all those things make the situation a lot more volatile, certainly, and it's going to impact prices.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying here is actually quite a. I mean, do you think this, if it continues? Because I think the one thing is, we saw Trump go into Venezuela. We saw it turn around very quickly. I have a sense that perhaps this has gone a bit longer than he intended for this Iran situation.
I'm not entirely sure about that. The news, which we were talking before about all this bias and the different pieces of views, and everybody's selling their own story. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a completely different thing, obviously, to strictly arrest the rogue leader of a dictatorship and put a sort of puppet regime in place that is already there. But it's only been 8 days, 9 days.
Yeah,
no?
yeah,
We tend to forget this because we get news in real time. No, it's only been 8 days. Were they expecting it to be less than 8 days? I find it very difficult. No, huh? I don't think that anybody has ever started an attack on a nation thinking, by Friday tea time everything is going to be sorted out. No, but obviously, I think that everybody acknowledges that the other side is much stronger than what they imagined. No, I think that the United States and Israel, I mean, I don't think that they're stupid. They have much more know that the Iranian regime has very, very, very strong military capabilities. That's obvious, no? And I think that on the same side, but I think that right now I think that both are playing the card of telling the public this is going to last for a very long time. Why? Because if it doesn't, success. Okay? Number two, because if they say this is going to last for a very long time, it erodes the confidence also of the enemy. For both sides, no? If Iran says this is going to be like Vietnam, the other side says, oh my God, you read it on CNN, you read it on whatever, or on X, and you're going to be very worried. If the Israelis say, oh, we're going to be there as long as it takes, then obviously that is also going to play. I think we need to sit down a little bit. Unfortunately, sitting down a little bit means that it's not going to last for 8 days, but I don't think it's going to last for 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
And
No.
by the way, the futures market is what is discounting. The futures market is basically saying that whoever runs out of options runs out in a month.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, that you can read the footprints, and I think, and I know because a lot of the time I listen to Bloomberg, and I think Bloomberg is definitely has a left bias to it a lot of the time. Yeah, and it annoys me sometimes because, they talk about Trump and Taco. Now I know you've dealt with this in the past, and you have called out that statement and saying, look, he's just an excellent negotiator. And I think that can you talk about that a bit? Because so many people are coming, it's just Taco time, interesting.
I always like to look at it from both perspectives. No, first, if you think that it's that the Trump always chickens out argument happens, then it makes no sense that you're at the same time those people are saying that this is going to be worse than 2008, worse than 1973. Okay, no. Hmm? But Trump is always negotiating, and Trump is negotiating with the Iranian regime as we are talking right now. They're doing that. Of course they are. And of course they are, because what Trump looks at is the world from a different perspective than the one that we have been used to reading about all this time, which is that he knows that China is going to be there. And it's an adversary, but at the same time, it's a trading partner. Iran is an adversary, and at the same time, it's an energy partner. Russia is an adversary, but it's an energy partner, and all those things can coexist if you understand that the position of whether from any outcome the position of the United States strengthens or weakens. His view is the way in which the world was going, the position of the United States always weakens because the so-called multipolar world is always at the expense of America. No? So what we are going to do right now is the opposite. We're going to continue to have agreements, continue to have deals, etc., but in which the outcome is a little bit more positive for the United States and for its leadership. No, so yes, obviously there is going to be some form of negotiated outcome. Whether that negotiated outcome is with a different regime or with different regimes, a lot of people are talking about who is going to be the other one to be in power if the Ayatollahs are taken away. Think about what happened in Libya. Think about what happened in Syria. Think about what happened in Iraq. The possibility is very likely there is a number of different fractions running the country instead of one regime. So all of those things are being taken into account from a transactional perspective. It's always a transactional perspective on trade, on and with the view that the position of the United States from the position of the administration strengthens. No?
Very interesting. I think that's really, really interesting stuff because having followed through from the Biden regime, which, I mean, the poor man I felt sorry for because he wasn't really he wasn't really running the show for many years, if ever. But I think what's interesting is that represents to me deep state in its perfect form, because you put somebody there who will just do auto pen it basically, and you put something in their ear and they tell them what to say, and etc. etc. Now, what was so interesting is because it's a rare commodity. When Trump comes along, he upsets everyone. What he does is he actually takes on deep state. Now, it always worries me when someone takes on that. I mean, let's face it, deep state has been I mean, you go back in history, you can see deep state at work. But I think it's very encouraging for us Brits here to see. I mean, Liz Truss tried it and got nailed. Unfortunately, and as she said, look, there's things you don't understand how powerful these people are. So I think it's really encouraging that he's still on his feet and he is actually a power to be reckoned with. And as Vance, as we started by talking about, as Vance came in and floored these people, they didn't dare say boo. And I think it's so interesting. I'm very encouraged by.
I agree. I agree. Look, democracies are challenging and democracies are flawed and democracies are imperfect, but it's good that people know what they're dealing with and what is and upfront. The thing about Trump, like the reason why some people dislike him so aggressive is because he is upfront. He is not saying like you very well said that Biden administration, we don't know who was in charge, but the Biden administration it did a little bit what I mentioned prior about the Spanish administration. They said one thing, do the other, and then there is this enormity that is running the show that is actually that doesn't even have a policy in which you can get what is going to be the benefit for Americans, in that case, for British citizens in your case. And you mentioned Liz Truss. Anyone that looks at what happened in 2022 knows that today the UK would be in a much better position if that mini budget and those policies would have been implemented instead of the nightmare that was first implemented by Mr. Sunak and then followed by Mr. Starmer. Everybody, it's incredible that the UK is in stagnation. It's a country I admire and I love. It's incredible that with all of the things that it has to benefit from the current uncertainty globally, we should be the global center of attraction of investment, growth, entrepreneurship, etc. It's the opposite. That is the evidence of the deep state. The evidence of the deep state is that there are forces at play that don't want your country to thrive. They don't want you to be richer because it's better to have a dependent nation than a wealthy nation of critical individuals. No? So
Yes.
Trump, in that sense, is like, I say that Trump is like an alarm clock with a mirror. Which is the worst invention in history. You wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you see yourself, unwashed, unshaved, etc. It's a disaster. He is basically putting in front of the bureaucrats in Europe, in front of the bureaucrats in the UK, in the world, all of the mistakes that they have made. And he is saying, this is what I believe. And it's me. And that's why he likes to say what I do, what I'm not saying this is something that we have agreed in some behind closed doors in some international group and nobody understands and nobody actually carries the weight of those policies. He says, this is what I do. This is what I think. This is the way we're going. Fair enough. Like it or dislike it. The reason why I think it's very important is because if we had continued the way that we were going with the Biden administration, today the United States would not be the fastest growing country in the large developed economies. Today, the U.S. Would be in a very significant threat because by now, if not by now, in a couple of months, we would have known of the nuclear bomb threat from Iran. That's the things that we know. Therefore, he does what he does what he says, and I think that that's what people value, even if they're against it. At least they say, "Look, nothing that is happening is a surprise." No. So I think it's an important factor, and I think it's very, very important for the future. Why? Because in the meantime, In Colombia, we've just found out that the contenders to Petro are going to be people that defend the ideas of freedom, like that people like Liz Truss are not considered anymore as some kind of lunatic, but actually the ones that can change this course of stagnation and impoverishment that we unfortunately entered into in the era of alleged multiculturalism, which to start with wasn't multiculturalism, because multiculturalism means that you and I live together in a country and you adapt and I adapt and we both reach a common ground. That's not the what we have lived in the past two decades is one-sided demolition of the Western values. That is a completely different thing.
And I think that's really interesting as well. And I think because a lot of people don't understand that Trump's tariff strategy was actually quite beneficial. And I think you did a piece on that and you kind of debunked it to a large degree. Maybe you could just sum that up.
Mm-hmm. No. Trump's strategy was beneficial because if you think about it, what he has done is to remind the European Union, for example, that you have to defend yourself, and you will continue to be a partner, but you have to defend yourself. And now that's not a debate anymore. It has reminded about the importance of energy security. It has reminded about the importance of controlling borders. Absolutely essential. No, it has reminded about the importance of bringing the economy back to the private sector and not being led by the public sector. Um, a lot of things. So it's basically a return to supply side measures, not just on economics, but supply side on the on everything that has to do also in international politics. And he has basically shown the world that what Mr. Pedro Sanchez, for example, is praising, as the period of prosperity was actually a period of stagnation in which the middle class has been obliterated.
I think everyone needs a good kick occasionally, shake things up, and it's healthy, very healthy. And I think I know you've been generous with your time. I'm just going to ask a couple more little things here, if you've got a second. Now, do you think that where are we? I mean, you coined the term. I'm going to ask you. You coined the term trueflation. Could you explain that, because it is your term?
Yeah. Well, there's a great company called Trueflation, independent analyst of inflation. Why we need to why? Because people are so angry. I mean, and rightly so. You know, I remember being in coming out of the studios of one of the UK television networks, and somebody and the driver told me, "What are you talking about? 3% inflation? There is no 3% inflation. Everything that I'm paying is 5, 7, 10%, 15% more expensive, etc. Why are they saying that there's 3% inflation? Even worse, why are they saying on the BBC that prices are coming down? Prices are not coming down. No, we need to be aware of the monetary destruction that we're living, and I think that is. This is very refreshing, is to see citizens, instead of blaming the prices of food on supermarkets, which is ludicrous, instead of blaming the price of petrol on oil companies, understand that the reason why your salary pays less, why your deposit savings are worth less, why it's more difficult for you to purchase a home, why it's more difficult for you to purchase the day-to-day essentials, is because of the destruction of the currency by the people who issue it, which are governments. No, so we need to understand that. So it's basically trying to bring back to the economic debate the real destruction in the cost of living of people that has nothing to do with CPI as a calculation. CPI may be we can discuss it for hours. But CPI is certainly a way of calculating inflation, but it's not inflation. If you're a person in the middle class or the lower middle class, the percentage of food, the percentage of housing in your basket is much larger than that for you and I, maybe. Therefore, inflation for those people is twice probably than what we live and what we experience, no?
So if a student comes to you and says, okay, Daniel, I want to take responsibility for myself. What's the best, what should I do to protect my wealth? Not to make money, but to protect my wealth. And obviously gold and silver comes to mind immediately, but what would you actually say?
Well, what I would say to them first is usually what my students come to me and say, I still don't have enough saved. No, you need to start yesterday. You need to start investing yesterday, because what is completely unquestionable is that you're going to experience a deterioration of the purchasing power of your currency. Once you understand that what you need to protect yourself is against the purchasing power of your currency, issues like the war on Iran, issues like the war in Ukraine, etc., are important, but they're not the most important. The most important is the destruction of the currency. And therefore, instead of having bonds and equities, you need to have gold, you need to have silver, you need to have those assets that will protect you and that will be decorrelated relative to the gradual erosion of the currency's purchasing power. And the other element, you need to be invested in equities, but in those that give you the kind of protection against the destruction of purchasing power that, for example, technology or other similar companies can give you. If you want more volatility and therefore higher risk, but probably higher returns as well, you can look at Bitcoin as an alternative. But from pure wealth protection, you need to look at gold, because everybody, the famous sentence attributed to JP Morgan that gold is money and everything else is credit is absolutely true. Those people that say to me that the world is going down the drain, I can tell you one thing: if you have gold, you will eat tomorrow.
I mean, this is why I always walk around with this simple little sovereign, and I say, and people say, well, they ask me about gold, and isn't it volatile? And they say, and I'll tell you what, in 1933, I could take this and exchange this for £1 at the bank. It's now this hasn't changed, but it's actually £900 now. So, and people go, oh, yes, I see what you mean, because it's not. That's changed. It hasn't changed at all. Especially if I walk around with one 100 years old. It hasn't changed. So I think it's really interesting. And so when people want to come to you, Daniel, and obviously your book, but you have a resource. You have resources, and we'll put in links. For people to access you, but. What can people, if they land on your blog, what do you offer? Obviously there's your books, and now it's in English. Perfect. I mean, that's great. I didn't actually know that was in English till you mentioned. But and that's a New World Economic Order. But what else can they land on your site? They can become a student. There's a number of things they can do.
Well, absolutely. No, they can certainly access all of my articles, my videos. You have my YouTube channel in English. You have my X account in English. I always say that it's easier to find me than to avoid me. And obviously there are a number of things that I'm giving lectures and conferences all the time. So I think that there's always a little bit for everybody. Things about macro, politics, and markets.
Daniel, thank you. I can't thank you enough for spending your valuable time with us today. It'll be well received, as was the last time. And I thank you for joining us and sharing your time with us.
As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us on this episode of Live from the Vault, brought to you by Kinesis Money. And a huge thanks goes out to Andrew Maguire and our featured guest, Daniel Lacalle, for the, cutting through the noise and sharing the insights that you just won't find anywhere else. Now, if you like this episode, make sure you subscribe now, give us a like, turn on your notifications so you never miss out. And don't forget to share this episode with someone that really needs to hear the real story behind the headlines. And we're back soon with more hard-hitting truths from inside the precious metal space. And until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you right here next week on Live from the Vault. See you then.